I was interested in a photo. It's a small boat, and you said in your note that there are two Chinese from, I guess it's from the Cholan area in Saigon. And what
Yes,
who are these? Who
that
are these
was
Chinese?
the strangest thing. I never really knew who they worked for, where they came from, but they sort of just attached themselves to me at Vinja, and they had an army sergeant that was with them, and he was there sometimes. I don't know where they slept, where they were home really their home base, but every day they were generally around us, and we fed them, and as a result, they became very protective of me. It was almost like having Secret Service or something, because if I was out moving around and they were there, they sort of kind of followed me around. It was strange, and um, they got paid. I understand they got army salary. They didn't get Vietnamese equivalents.
Hmm.
Uh, they got very good money, and they were mean. I was respectful of them because they had a reputation. Uh, when they went around I was told, when they went around rice paddies where women were working, the women would all throw up their blouses to show that they weren't carrying any grenades or anything
Wow.
uh, when they showed up. And oh, there were stories about them, but I they used to invite me when they got paid. They had what um, the sergeant called a Buddha breakfast, um, the celebration breakfast of getting paid, and they always invited me. And they squatted down on the, you know how the Orientals squat. They provided an ammo box for me so I could sit there with them. And it usually was something that I had given them, some canned hot dogs that were green and awful, and um, sea rats or something. One time we got a bird or bird meat that they had shot with a 45, and it had loaded with bones, and it was just awful. Um, but they always brought Vietnamese bread with them, that because that made anything palatable. But one time they had some, like, it looked like spaghetti sauce, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I asked him. I said, well, what is this? And
Yeah.
none of them spoke English well, and so I said, um, so one of them figured out what I said, and he said in either Vietnamese or Chinese. He, told the rest of them, tried to figure out what it was, how to say it. Finally, one of them went roof roof, and I figured out what it was. It must have happened through the areas. They did. They used to give the boats puppies, and then they'd steal them back. And not just the Chinese, the Vietnamese did that. And
So these were Chinese, ethnic Chinese living in South Vietnam. And you say they're paid by the U.S. Army. Were they mercenaries, do you know, or do you have any idea?
I never figured it out. They were doing some things that I didn't like. One of them, they were on the North Bank where we were getting ambushes. Um, I found out that they were uh, uh, booby trapping the spider holes that were dug there. And so they dig down a little deeper and put a 105 shell down there, rigged to go off. I don't know how they did it, but um, it precluded me sweeping the area with my people after an ambush. Um, and so I told the Chinese, I told them, not to do it, to
Yeah.
stop it, and then when the sergeant showed up around there, I told him, I said, I cut that off because I've got to go on the beach there with my people. But
Well,
it was things like that that I just, they didn't seem to have any direction. To me, I don't know what they did when they went out in the rice paddies and on their own, but they were extremely, they were, I consider they were reliable friends, that they
hmm,
would help us if we needed it.
yeah.
And we really never did. I don't recall any operation that we used, certainly that we used them in, but they were daylight ops. And they would go off, two or three in a group, and they'd go off and stop workers and people because um, that area was directly in between the U Minh forest and Cambodia. And so
Mhm.
it
Wow.
was the main route to get people into the U Minh. And of course, the U Minh was uh, totally in control of the enemy.
As you're talking about these helpful but mysterious Chinese who are being paid by the US, and we see some of the things they're doing, but we're not really clear what they're about. It reminds me that, as I've talked to veterans who served in the Mekong, it seemed that the Mekong, my perspective as an outsider listening to vets talk about the Mekong, it seems like that region had a lot of mystery in it. Um, there are stories that come to my mind, but it just seemed to a place where there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on, like what you've described. Like we've got these ethnic Chinese here, they're paid by the Americans. We can see some of what they're doing, but we're not really sure what they're up to. The Mekong is also where you have the Navy SEALs, who are, kind of these men of mystery there. Does
We
that
never
resonate with
never knew what we. I used to insert seals, and uh, never knew what they were doing. And a couple times I asked for their assist, and they said, "Well, that's not our job," and which kind of torqued me. Uh, the Some of the mystery too may come from the fact that there were a lot of people roaming around and uh, never quite sure who worked for who.
you?
Um, there were some alpha boats that were with some mine group or something, but they had rockets on the side of the forward mount. And I never figured out who they worked for or what they did, but occasionally I came across them. And they usually had an officer with them. But you're right. I think there's just a lot of things that I was sent out on an op one time when I was working with the Army out of Dong Tam, sent out with a Vietnamese officer, Army officer, and I took a monitor and I had a monitor and a couple tangos, I think. But I'm on the monitor and we go up this little bitty, real small stream, and I had a Cobra with me for defense. I was in like a tunnel. I was in with the canopy was all the way over this canal, and I was having to put up purple smoke so that uh, helicopter knew that we were where exactly we were, so he could cover if we got shot at. But we get all the way up into where I had to turn around. I had to actually go up on the beach to turn around. That's how narrow it was. And there's a little town there, and there are a bunch of people across a rice paddy. And there's some people walking around, and the officer says, "Shoot there." And I said, "What?" He said, "Shoot there." I said, "You want me to fire on that town?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "No, I don't have authorization." But when I got back, I asked my boss, I said, "Who authorized that?" And you know, I'm not sure that somebody else who was a Rambo type might have fired, and it would have been a grave error, I think.